not all money is good money. And there are times in which you will benefit more by leaving it on the table or leaving it for someone else than you are bending who you are in order to achieve it.
This is Building the Blueprint, and it's all about education and entertainment. Self-help content is great, but it gets really, really boring. And every single week, I have an important and successful guest. And not only do we shoot the shit, but we have insightful conversations. So you both laugh and learn at the same time. I hope you stick around, because this is Building the Blueprint. You do wake up at like 5 a.m., so I would assume you have to get the coffee in.
So I wake up at 5 a.m., that's true. But what's funny is when you get to see me, I'm still East Coast time,
right?
But on the West Coast. So it always feels like I'm up much earlier, which is true. But in my mind, I'm actually sleeping in a little bit too.
Yeah. Seems more impressive to me because you're at the 3 hour time difference.
Exactly.
How many coffees is too many? Right? Like, is it like, it's like 2, 3? Because like, I got a lot of friends that love coffee, but then I see them on their like 4th coffee and I'm like, all right, hold on.
It's a minimum of 2 to start the day.
Minimum of 2 to start the day.
Minimum of 2 to start the day. How much is too much?
There isn't too much.
I was going to say, I'm not sure if I found that threshold. The things that don't work well with me, to be honest with you, are like the artificial stuff, like Celsius and stuff like that. I feel like my heart's going to jump out of my chest. But otherwise, coffee's, I'm good. But I also started when I was like 7th grade, started drinking coffee. So it never really affected me the same way.
7th grade is wild. I've always been a Red Bull. Yeah. I can't do the coffee. I can do a chai tea latte from Starbucks maybe. Otherwise, I'm just downing sugar-free Red Bulls.
For sure. So we would be great, right? So I would drink all the coffee, you would drink all the Red Bulls, and we would never, the paths would never cross.
Yeah, it's a perfect pairing. Well, Casey, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you on. For everybody listening, Casey is the founder and president of ForCollegeForLife, an organization loaded with amazing speakers that help organizations all over the country be at their best. Casey himself has been a leading national voice on the topics of healthy masculinity and personal development for more than a decade and is seen as a mentor in my eyes and the eyes of many of my peers, especially here at Oregon. He's a badass through and through, and I'm not just saying that so he'll hire me as a speaker someday. Please welcome to the show, Casey Cornelius. Casey, welcome to the show.
Nick, thank you for having me. It's always a little awkward when someone's doing your bio. So pull back the curtain here just a little bit. So I host a podcast as well, and I'm always the person reading the bio, so I don't get to have the blush moment of somebody talking about you before they bring you to the mic. But that was fantastic. Thank you, and thank you for having me on this. I really enjoy it.
Of course, it's always funny too. I've been on a few podcasts where they have me write my own bio, and then you're sitting there, and then it feels even weirder because I'm like, I didn't even come up with this. I'm just like reading my own words about myself.
For sure.
Get used to it. But I mean, you truly are a badass. Like, you do a lot of really cool things, and I definitely spam you a lot, right? I use you as a resource, whether you like it or not. I'm definitely reaching out, and I think it's so cool that what you do is so centered around connection and around helping people be at their best, because those are topics that I really enjoy. And for those of people listening who don't know, right, you're a consultant, speaker, person. Could you elaborate a little more on like what you do for people who don't already know you?
Sure. Yeah. So the best way that I always describe the speaking element of our work is, when you're on campus and you see that sign that says this person's going to be here at 7:00 tonight in this location doing this program, that's what we do. So I think probably when I was a student, I didn't exactly understand how that process worked, right? It was just this person just showed up and just was talking about a topic. Well, over the years, obviously, I've come to understand the service element of that, and recognizing the fact that this for a lot of people is their profession, their occupation. So that's the speaking side of it. In addition to that, a lot of the work that I've done specifically with the University of Oregon has been more in what I would call kind of the consulting space. So leading a retreat or having conversations that aren't in front of 1,000 people at a time. That I would say is about 20% of the work that I do, both on colleges, college campuses with organizations, but then also in the private for-profit center as well, right? So what I often say is the speaking side of things is the stuff that gets the Instagram posts and the signs, where a lot of the consulting work happens quietly and behind closed doors. Because often, quite honestly, the folks who are asking for those services don't exactly want it put on a billboard that they're
Mhm.
that they're bringing in an outside consultant. So that kind of makes up the entirety of the pie of my work, and also the work that we do at For College for Life.
When you come in, you're expected to make a change, right? Something's expected to
Mm.
happen. What do you think
Yeah.
your dynamic kind of brings to a group or a room when you're speaking or giving a workshop?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I often say that the best speakers or facilitators or consultants are the people who solve problems. They're being brought in, we're being brought in to do something that is either a heavy lift to do natively on a campus or within an organization, or just having that outside perspective and outside voice is beneficial. So, one of the things that I do is, this sounds very like ego to say, and I feel really uncomfortable even framing it this way, but I
Go
feel
for it.
like if I had a quote unquote superpower, as people say, it is helping people get better at their task or craft, or whatever it might be. It doesn't mean necessarily that I'm an expert on that, right? So if I go and I work with an athletic team on mindset, it doesn't mean that I'm the best fill in the blank lacrosse player on the planet. I'm not. I'm not anywhere close to that level. But I think one of the things that I've been blessed with over the years is I can help most people or organizations get from where they are to where they want to be, or at least expedite the process to get there. And I think that that's kind of the value added proposition that I bring into a room or bring to a table. The other thing is, and you've seen this, you correct me if I'm wrong, I pride myself in having more energy than anyone in the room. So like when we were joking at the beginning about being up earlier, whether I was on the East Coast or the West Coast, it really wouldn't matter. I'm the first person in the room. I have the most energy. I recognize the fact that one of my tasks, but also my burdens, is to be the thermostat for the room, right? So if the room's too high, I need to bring it back down. And if the room's a little too cool, I need to dial it up a little bit so that we can get to that intended outcome of making things better.
Yeah. I'm starting, I mean, as you know, like I'm starting to dabble in that world with
Yeah.
workshops. I haven't given any keynotes, but with workshops and with a little bit of consulting on the
Yeah.
side. And one of the balances that I've been, trying to figure out is the balance between, okay, how much of this work is me giving tangible advice that I know, and how much of this work is me just facilitating really good conversations and asking questions so that, they can kind of figure it out themselves. What do
You
you
know,
think that balance is?
I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit on the industry of this. And for those who have no interest in the industry of speaking or facilitation or consulting, this is going to be really, really boring. But if you do, I think many of the best speakers in the world are scared to death to facilitate. And I think many of the best facilitators in the world are scared to death to speak.
Mm.
It feels like those things would naturally overlap, and for a few, for some percentage of the pie, they do. But for most people, like, if you put yourself in the mindset of a really great speaker, someone who knows that they get the stage and the mic for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or 60 minutes, the act of handing the mic over to an audience, not knowing where it's going to go, not knowing what might be unearthed, can be a really terrifying experience, where some thrive off of that. Like, they thrive off of, I don't know what's going to happen. There's this old way of framing it. It's more important what we uncover than what we cover, right? Like, people who are keynoters typically are covering something. People who facilitate or consult are typically uncovering something. So you kind of have to find your comfort in one of those two paths, or recognize the fact that different tasks call for different skill sets, right? So if I'm thinking about, recently I did a 30-minute keynote, 30 minutes. And
Mm.
for a speaker, 30 minutes is like,
Pretty
I
quick.
don't know sometimes that I can introduce myself in 30 minutes. So for me, it's breakneck speed. I don't think I took a drink of water. I don't think I paused, and the 30 minutes was gone. We had a speaker recently who was asked to do a 17-minute keynote, like
Wow.
a 17-minute keynote. And that's an uncomfortably fast pace for those of us who really love sort of the art and science of this. But at the same time, I also love the 3 day. You've seen it, the 3 day retreat
Yeah.
format where we can dig deep into things, and no matter what's on the agenda per se, whatever happens is going to dictate what needs to come next. When I was just last at Oregon, as a matter of fact, it was ELR, so this is the Emerging Leaders Retreat, and some of the participants were really insistent on getting an agenda, like what's going to be at this time, what are we going to cover at this time, and I finally had to say, there's an agenda, but to give it to you wouldn't matter because it's going to change as the dynamics of the day change too. So again, these are kind of, I think, two different temperaments or two different skill sets that one needs to master, or at least understand what they're comfortable doing and not doing.
Yeah. One of my biggest things that I've kind of realized recently, and I'm curious your thoughts on it, is like, especially with the uncovering aspect and when you're kind of getting to the audience, a lot of that is kind of turns into improv then. And I think speakers who are maybe a little nervous to go off script or, not sure if they can handle that, are more scared of that, right? And I think that's a big thing
Yeah,
too that I've been teaching a lot of my peers when it comes to like interviewing or
yeah,
networking is like if you're able to, you're always going to get questions you're not prepared for,
yeah.
and you're going to give more dynamic answers and more intriguing and creative answers if it's not just off a script, right?
Yeah, I mean, so there's we're gonna get nerdy and a little meta
Let's do it. Let's
in
do
this
it.
conversation. One, I think that the way that people avoid that fear of what might be uncovered is to never allow people to ask questions.
Yeah.
You've seen that before too, where it's like they begin and they end, and there's nothing, there's no audience interaction element in between.
Yep.
That's a defense mechanism, right? Sometimes it's because of time limitations or format or room or something like that, but it's a defense mechanism to never open it up to thoughts, questions, critique, whatever it might be. Okay. The second thing is that, um I don't know how to say this. So the notion in the speaking world that the script is an essential element is very much based on individual taste. Like, I know some fantastic speakers who write a script. And I'm going to shout somebody out. It's not going to surprise anybody, right? So a member of our team who I think is elite in many ways is Jay Harris. Well, Jay's day job is an anchor on SportsCenter. Not surprisingly, he writes a script and there's a teleprompter, and he has mastered the art of looking at a teleprompter, reading it, but while still having this conversation with those of us sitting on our couch wanting the highlights for the day, right?
Yeah. That's
But
what he's good at.
it, it's elite, right? But I got to tell you, like, on a personal level, if someone gave me a script and said, "Hey, read this for the next 60 minutes," I couldn't do it. I would be so fixated on the words and getting it right, and that I wouldn't be thinking about, one, what I was saying, but two, the nuance, the art of tone and inflection and pause and all the things that make something effective and moving
Yeah. And reading the room.
and yeah, because again, you get so fixated on the words on the page. I've I don't want to name them by name because it was kind of a funny moment, but I've had cases even recently, but over the years, where I'm asked to deliver remarks to something, and I'm happy to do it. But sometimes they will provide a script. Oh, here's your script, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm I'm not going to do that. If you tell me to speak for 5 minutes, or to welcome this person, or to speak extemporaneously, I'm happy to do it. But the idea of having a script is just, it's not it's not what I do.
Yeah.
But but for those of you who are interested, Nick, and I know that you're going down this path, but anybody else, those who are interested in speaking, I think that the best thing that you can do is one, get as many reps as possible, so you start internalizing sort of a script for how things go. But then, as opposed to putting 1,000 words or 2,000 words on a piece of paper or a teleprompter, have five written down. Have 5 words that signal to you, oh, these are the things that I really want to touch on, and make sure that from point A to point B, each of those five get the appropriate attention that they deserve.
Yeah, I think that's great. One of the things I've really started to notice is, so much of it is building trust with people, especially out of the gate, especially for those retreats, right? Those 3 days retreats when we're talking about pretty vulnerable things at times.
Yeah.
What is your kind of strategy, or what are some things you do to make sure you're building trust with people so that they really open up and they get the most out of, what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a tough dance in a way, especially when you're being invited in and there's something really tough that's happening. Like there's a crisis that's taking place, or there's internal distrust amongst the stakeholders in the room, and you're asked to change that dynamic, or get it closer to right. I think one of the things that, and this is not for everybody, and there are also people who are really good at this craft who would disagree with what I'm about to say, but I think that the best way to do it is to be vulnerable about who you are as well, about your motivations and your story. Like when I introduce myself and I talk about my background and upbringing and the story of my life getting to this place, a lot of it is stuff that on the surface people would be pretty embarrassed about. I mean, even having done this for all these years, there's a thing that I do in a lot of my programs where I show my childhood home, humble beginnings, all that other kind of stuff. And I don't want to do the whole story now, but until actually just like 6 months ago, 8 months ago, I showed a direct image of the home that I grew up in, because there's another image that's slightly on an angle that you see the house that's next door. Well, the house that's next door was the headquarters of a gang. And I was always embarrassed to admit that, like, this national gang was headquartered next door to where I grew up. But actually, I found that sharing even just that vulnerability of like, hey, there's nothing in my past that would have presupposed that I would be standing here today, allows more people to be comfortable about what happens next, right? So again, when you come into situations that are difficult before your arrival, I think the human vulnerability is important, but then also like naming it. And the highlight example that I always give, it's actually a professional highlight of mine. Um, I was the first person invited to speak as an outsider at the University of Idaho after their tragedy. They had 4 members of their campus community murdered, and they went through and candidly are still in some ways going through a really tough healing process and justice process and so forth. But I was the first outsider that was invited to come and speak to that community, and to pretend like somehow that wasn't true, or that we weren't coming together in this area of healing, um, because of this tragedy that transpired, would have been not only inauthentic, but I think it would have been disrespectful to the community, to the memory of those that we were talking about and honoring. So just kind of putting your head down and plowing through and pretending like those dynamics aren't there, I don't think works, and I don't think that it respects humanity. Some people who do this work would say you're brought in to solve this problem, you're brought in to deliver this program or this content, and whatever the external factors are not your concern. You should simply do the thing that you were being asked to do. I default to the side of humanity, even if it means vulnerability, expressing some things that could be embarrassing and so forth, right? So that's kind of where I fall on that dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, and it ends up being a lot of sharing of you. And one of the best takeaways or outcomes I've had from the podcast, I've had from speaking, I've had from posting a lot on social media is I've realized like I'm way more comfortable being myself in my everyday life now. Like I feel much more unapologetically, myself, which is really interesting because I didn't expect that to happen, right? That wasn't like a goal. It wasn't like a goal of like I'm going to do this for that, but when you really do start to share who you are and post vulnerable content, right? Like I'm going throughout the world and I'm like, on days where I used to be like, oh, I have a bad outfit on, I don't look my best. I'm like, well, I've videos post online forever where I look way worse, or like, I've said more embarrassing things or I've been more vulnerable. And it's like you get used to it. And it's almost like
Yeah,
running in the sense of like, you're like, okay, I've been running for a while now. I can run more, right? It's
yeah.
getting easier. And that's been a really cool aspect of it.
I'm going to wax philosophical here for just a second, right? So there was I would say a trend or a movement, whatever you call it, over the last decade or so, where people got really interested and fixated on their personal brand, to the point where it was almost as if their identity was curated,
Hmm.
what they talked about, how they presented themselves. Like you said, wearing the right. And yes, I recognize the fact that that this,
You,
you're an Oregon. I'm repping, like,
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
showing love, a little different vibe. But people who'd be like, "Oh, I only wear green in posts, or I only wear blue, or this certain shade of blue," and it became this deeply curated brand identity that left you kind of wondering, who is this person in reality? And I made a choice a long time ago, and it has not been without criticism or questions or whatnot, that I was simply going to live out loud. And not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone's going to accept it. Not everyone's going to want to take part in it. But I never wanted people to wonder what was important to me, or where I stood on critical topics. Um, I I just wanted to live as out loud as possible, so that I never had to figure it out. Like, if you spend 10 minutes talking with me, you're going to hear about my family. Like, you're going to hear about my daughter, my wife, my parents. Like, I'm very close to my family. So it would be awkward if in my social presence I never put that out there.
Yep.
So if someone's like, "Oh, you have a child," that would be shocking to me. Like, that would tell me that I'm not doing my job. Not that they're not paying attention, but that I'm not doing my job to talk about the things that are really important to me.
Yeah. And what, like building off that, I definitely had a moment, a couple months where I was like, okay, I'm only posting personal development stuff, right? I'm only posting job stuff or networking tips or this and this. And then it got to a point where like, okay, well, I'm out at the bars and I'm nervous to have fun because I'm like, well, no, my brand is I'm the professional development guy. And it's like,
Yeah,
well, if then I have this image to uphold 24/7. And you're totally right of like, if you know, every moment, I don't have to like be fun Nick 24/7, right? There's also there's also, sports Nick, there's also self-help Nick, right?
sure.
But it's like having a little bit of that in everything makes it a lot easier because then you can go in the real world and you're like, okay, I can be my true self because I am my true self on camera, right? You don't have to like
You
hide.
never have to figure it out. You never have to wonder, like, who do I have to be in this dynamic, because who you are is who you are. So the good news, in some ways, I was kind of shitting on the idea of like personal brand and everything like that. The good news is, I think that phase of um, professional identity is ending. I think that the people who are still holding on tight to like the personal brand stuff, are starting to even evolve a little bit, or kind of move off to the side, because I think, especially younger people, people, 0 through 18, but also young adults, are just over it. Like they're over the idea of this curated, glossy identity,
Yeah.
of having, 500 photos in your camera roll that you're just ready to deploy on Instagram, right? Like,
Yeah. And I think if you look at like the
no.
biggest
Yeah.
figures nowadays and like the
Yeah.
biggest podcasts nowadays, it's like it's the people who are really real and vulnerable,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Yeah.
like the Joe Rogans, what's her name? Not Alex Earl. Like the Call Her Daddy podcast, like
Yes,
those
yes, yes, yes.
podcasts, like
Yep,
a lot of comedian podcasts where it's just they're not dancing around this image. It's like they're
yep,
very to the point.
yep. Now, listen, there are also folks who are listening to this who might be a little nervous about when you are authentic and when you're letting it fly and so forth. It also means that it increases the likelihood or potential that you're going to misstep. That you're going to say something that you're like, oh, I wish I could pull that back in, or my thoughts not fully formed on this topic, but yet I'm speaking on it anyway.
Yep.
th- I think as people, we still haven't completely figured out the dance of that. But then also simply apologizing and being like, you know what, I actually misspoke there, or I was wrong, or I spoke without understanding the full context of this thing. We haven't evolved. I mean, we can do those things, but we haven't professionally and interpersonally evolved to a place where that's the default thing. Like, be who you authentically are. Sometimes it's messy and you're going to make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, say, I handled this the wrong way.
Yeah. And one mindset that's helped me a lot. Have you read the Four Agreements? The Four
Yes.
Agreements?
Yeah.
There's a great sense in the book where he says the biggest assumption that we make, and the worst assumption that we make, is we assume others will be as critical a judge to us as we are to ourselves.
Yep.
Right. And it's like,
Yep.
okay, people are not as mean as you think. People
Nope.
aren't thinking about you as much as you think. It's like, who are you thinking about today? It's like, I'm thinking about myself today.
Yep.
And that
Yep.
really helps. Right.
And again, back to humanity and humility, right? Saying I'm wrong. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not as dialed into this story as possible. And so as we're filming this, one of the things, Joni Ernst said something about, like, we're all going to die anyway at a rally, and people have taken it pretty harshly, and as opposed to saying I messed up or I didn't mean that or whatever, kind of doubled down on it, and like, I'm going to record this apology video in a graveyard and everything, as opposed to just saying, you know what, I didn't I didn't mean to be flippant about people's death or their well-being or their health. That's the part that we need to get to. So authentic humanity and humility, but then also when we walk toward messy topics and we step in it, as we're going to do as humans, saying I messed up, or I was not fully informed, or if I had it to do over again, I would have said it this way. That's I think that's the next step that we need to get to.
Yeah. And I think the more people that start doing that, the easier it is, where like the assumption isn't, oh, this person said this to be, be disrespectful or, do this negative thing. It's like, no, we were just having conversation and a discussion, and that happens. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm hoping like that's
Yeah.
kind of what the culture and conversation gets to. And I think
I
it
agree.
will. I think it's getting closer to that, but
I hope
with
so.
time.
I hope so. Yeah.
At what age is skateboarding cool again? Because I feel like you hit your 20s, maybe 25, and then it kind of drops off. It's like, all right, it's cool in college or high school. But what age is like, okay, it's cool to skateboard again?
I think that there's probably like a bar chart or like a Venn diagram here. So I think that when you're in high school, you can skate and not be great at it and it still be cool.
Definitely. Yeah.
But if you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s and you're skating and you're not very good at it, it's not as cool anymore. Like,
No.
it's like, you you stay in your lane a little bit. And I say that as someone who is not blessed with the balance and inner ear dynamics to be good at things like ice skating or skiing or so forth. Like, I'm not that guy. I
Yeah.
can lift heavy things, and I can like I can grapple, like I can do that kind of stuff. But if you ask me to go ice skating, I'm not that guy. So I think that there's some probably self-awareness that comes into it. like it's
I feel like
cool at 15, but maybe not at 50. Yeah.
once you hit 60 though, it's like cool again. Like, once you hit 60,
100%.
it's like, I feel like it's the same level of like, you don't have to be good. It's like you're 6-year-old who skateboards. Like, that's awesome.
I
Right. I
think
feel
that
like 30 to 60 where it's like, I don't know.
don't you think that, again, I know that we're of different generations on this, but don't you think that there's also this phase of life that that folks who are little older get to, and I admire and candidly sort of look forward to it, where they just stop obsessing about the interpretation of others.
Oh yeah, it's like being a kid, right? That comes back of like you don't care anymore.
Yeah, or like even if you do, it is outweighed by like these shoes are comfortable and I'm going to wear them because they're comfortable. Like, where you would be
Yeah.
particularly sensitive to like, oh, I got to be on. So like big difference between our generations. So I see members of your generation wear like sneakers and they're dirty and they're
Yes.
creased
Yeah.
and like I get this panic attack because I come from an era where the goal was to wear them, but to appear as if they've never been worn,
Yeah.
like make them pristine white and so forth, right? So I think that there's probably a point in even my journey that I'm going to get to chronologically where it's like, hey, if they get dirty, if they get creased, whatever, like why am I cleaning these shoes each and every time? But again, I'm not there yet. I'm not there.
Yeah, it's like the social status slash like we're still wanting something, right? It's like I'm still
Yeah.
looking for a partner and a career and a place to
Yeah.
live. And like when you're 60, it's like you've got all that, or at least a decent amount of people
Hopefully.
have all that.
Hopefully.
So there,
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully the dream is you have all that, right? And then if you
Yeah.
have all that, it's like, all right, well, I don't really need to appeal to anyone else anymore. It's like I'll do what I enjoy.
Yeah. Personal fulfillment, personal happiness. And I think peace, maybe like again, to get a little philosophical, I think that we're all, yearning for that inner peace that says like, it's cool. No matter what, it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the most valuable skills you can have that I think a lot of people don't really think about is being a great storyteller. And you, of course, are a great storyteller because it's what you do for a living in a lot of
Mm.
ways. What do you think separates a good storyteller from a great storyteller?
Mm. It's funny that you say that because there are people that I look to, and when they speak or when they tell stories, I'm like, ooh, this person's really good. And
Mhm.
to me, I think that the magic happens when we can place people in not only the environment in which the story takes place, but also the feelings associated with that experience also.
Yeah.
A lot of people can give you like A, B, C, D, like here's what happened in this order. Some people can paint you an image of what the room looked like and what the smell was and what time of year and what the temperature, like the external things. But then the most elite are the people that can make you feel something at the same time. I sometimes will say when I'm working with new speakers, aspiring speakers, or people who are really trying to amp up, like I think that all speakers try to accomplish one of three things, right? So they want to teach an audience something, like they want to introduce some new knowledge. They want to create or change a behavior, right? Or they want the audience to feel something, right? So teach something, create or change a behavior, or feel something. I think really great speakers will try to do two of those things, and the most elite speakers do all three. And candidly, there are times that we can aspire to do all of those things, and one or two, or hopefully never three, but like one or two can fall flat. But when you get the frequency dialed in so that all of those things can happen, and you can tell story and get people in the moment and let them feel something and teach them something in the process, that's that's epic. Those are the things that one of the reasons that I love the art, the science of speaking is that it has been a consistent element throughout history that spoken word can move and inspire audiences. Like, you think about the I Have a Dream speech. That moved an audience, not only the folks who were physically present, but that concept moved an audience to something. It made them feel something. It was so perfect. And I'm just to share this for folks who don't know, The beautiful thing to me about the I Have a Dream speech is that it's not actually the speech that Dr. King intended to give that day. Um, when we see the video of the speech, he's putting together some papers on the lectern, and people assume, having watched the video, that was the start of the speech. But in reality, he had just gotten done giving a speech called "Normalcy Never Again," and none of us have ever seen a video of the "Normalcy Never Again" speech.
Mhm.
But a friend of his in the front row, her name is Mahalia Jackson. Mahalia Jackson calls to him and says, "Tell them about your dream," because she had heard elements of this talk that he was working on, this program. And you could see that Dr. King sort of pauses for a second and is trying to consider, because people are clapping, you did a great job, trying to consider, do I just take the applause and get off stage? I just gave my speech. Or do I talk from my heart? Do I tell this story? Do I try to inspire change? And thank goodness he did, because not only did it give us one of the most profound examples of perfect speech, but also changed arguably the dynamics of the 20th century.
Yeah, one of the really cool aspects that I've come to realize about great stories is I continue to come back to them, right? It's like
Yes.
great stories I can listen to or watch or hear a dozen times. And every time I know how it ends, but I enjoy it because I like the emotional roller coaster that it takes me on, right?
It puts you in the
And
moment. It
it
puts
puts
you
you in
there.
the moment, and it brings you on a micro journey every time. And even if you know where it's going, I think it's kind of like a roller coaster. It's like I know
Yeah.
how the roller coaster works at Disneyland, but it's like I'm going to keep getting on it because I enjoy
Yes.
it,
Yes.
right? So I
Yes.
that is a really cool aspect of it.
For sure.
Um, what do you think are some of the mistakes that a majority of people make, right? Especially maybe younger people my age that are not used to public
Mm.
speaking yet, not used to. I mean, I think a lot of our communication too is just so fast paced and it's so
Yep.
slang diction, and you're not thinking about telling a nice story, right? You're
Yep.
thinking about getting the information out. What do you think are some tips or some mistakes that we run into?
If I could give a prescription to everybody who wanted to speak in some way, speak small scale, speak large scale, the first thing that I would say is to acknowledge the fact that when Americans are surveyed, the number one fear that we have is public speaking. And that's above uh,
Yep.
blood, airplane crash, would like spiders. Public speaking is number one, right? So just given the fact that you're doing it, you're already doing what most people say they're scared of. Okay, right? So like give yourself that grace. And by the way, if you're not scared of it, awesome. You should still have a little bit of nerves related to it, but like if you're not terrified and petrified, awesome. The second thing is most of the advice that has been given throughout the years is actually crap, right? The whole like picture everybody naked. That doesn't that doesn't relax anybody. Like that's a whole anyway, terrible advice. Here's here's the at least one thing that I would suggest that's going to help no matter what arena you're speaking in, you to get from where you are to where you want to be. The audience does not know what you're going to say next. You do. Like you have a sense of what's the next element of this story or the next point that you need to get to. You have some sense of what's next, but they don't. So if you make a mistake, as long as you don't react to it, like, oh, I mean, fill it in, like, fill it in.
Improv.
Improv, right? Understand that, like, oh, I didn't actually say that the right way. Let me work that through one more time. The second element to this is you're going to make mistakes, even in something that like the back of your hand, like your story, you're still going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. It's very human. Our brains are doing a whole bunch of things at the same time, right? So it's important to remember that you're going to make a mistake. And the easiest thing um, to help with this is two things from my perspective. The first one is the realization that we cannot, as human beings, think and feel at the same time. If we're thinking, we're not feeling. And if we're feeling, we're not thinking. So if we're lost in our thoughts and we make a mistake, we don't have the capacity to emotionally recover from it. We get instantly embarrassed. We can't get out of it because we're fixated on it. So it's okay to make a mistake. And then the last thing, and I I would say 99% of speakers, myself included, are really, really challenged with this. It's okay to pause. Not every moment has to be filled with words. Sometimes a small pause allows for thoughts to sink in. It allows for the audience to recalibrate themselves. So if you're like, I'm talking about this thing, and then I'm moving to the next thing, and then moving to the next thing, you didn't give anyone the chance to internalize and to process what you're saying. So it's okay to pause. Not every second. And I know as I'm talking through this podcast, I'm talking a lot, but not every second has to be filled with sound. It doesn't.
Yeah, and when the slower I give my speeches, the less mistakes I typically make, right? Because I have more time to process what I'm going to say next and announce and enunciate. And like you said, be a dynamic communicator where you're thinking about your pace and your volume and your tone more and your body language, right? Like it's so much easier.
Give inflection. Yeah, for
Slow
sure.
down.
For sure. For sure. I
Yeah.
mean, and again, if you think about from an audience perspective, this is a dated reference, but there was this commercial back in like the 80s. It was called Micro Machines. And this guy was like the fastest talker on the planet, like Guinness Book World Records. It's like, like
Yeah,
we
then you
don't
slow it down.
process things that way. Like Eminem, if you've ever listened to like Rap God as an example, right? I live in Michigan, so gotta give respect to Eminem.
Yeah.
You can't think as fast as he's talking. So you have to listen to it, listen to it, listen to it. Well, the problem is that in spoken word, we don't get the chance to do that. We don't get the chance to go back. So just slow it down a little bit. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. One of the aspects of your workshops, I don't know about your keynotes, but at least in your workshops and the retreats that I've been on with you,
Mhm.
is you like to use props, right? Like
Mhm.
specifically, like you like to use a basketball or a little props to. I'm curious what the reasoning is behind that because I use props, but like I'll have little squish balls or stress balls or things just to like have people's attention. Like, do you do that for the same reason?
Yeah. So there's some art and there's some science to it, right? So the art is it becomes more memorable to if I have something in my hands, for example. So what Nick is referencing here is there's some opportunities during retreats that I do where well I'll have people circle up and share out so that there's not just chaos in terms of 50 people or 100 people or whatever it is talking or trying to figure it out. Everyone who has this object, a basketball, whatever it might be, is the person who's talking. um, it creates some order to things, but it also creates another sensory opportunity. The more senses, again, this kind of gets into the science of it. The more senses that we can engage in a learning experience, the better the learning experience, the more meaningful, the more purposeful it becomes, right? So, and I'm trying to get better at this. Like I've desired to do it for a long time, and I've amping it up here in the coming months and years. One of the things that I believe wholeheartedly, and I'm going to shout out Q McCahern because I think he does this as good as anybody in the space right now. Using music, like when you express an idea, or when I was a kid, this was happening to introduce some music into it too that people can connect to. Oh yeah, I remember that song, whether they had only heard it one time or it was the most popular song of the year, whatever it is. The more sensory connections we can make to things, the more lasting and deep the impact can be, right? So the art and science of using a basketball when we're circled around talking is that we're speaking and we're touching this object, and it's the same object that everybody else will end up touching as well. And it just fully connects the experience at a deeper level.
Yeah, now that you say that too, and I'm thinking back on it, that is one of the most memorable experience, like most memorable things that we did, right? Is I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about maybe a couple fun exercises that we did. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about probably like the deepest conversation we had. Right?
Yeah.
Like those are the ones that
Yeah.
stick with you. So that's really cool.
But
One
if you
of
think
the
about, so the moment that you're so for those of you who've ever been on a retreat with me, the moment that you're holding that object is also when you're sharing, in some ways, your most profound thoughts. Like
Mhm.
when I say to you, what's been the proudest moment of your membership experience, for example, and you're holding this while you're sharing it. So then the next time in the process of that weekend, those 3 days, whatever it is, that you're holding that, you're connecting the experience back to the last time you did it too.
Right,
Connects
right.
the dots. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the hard parts about workshops and long days is, people lose attention. People get tired. People are, by hour 8 or by 9 p.m. of us sharing and working all day, people are kind of like, all right, I kind of want to go to bed, Casey. Like,
Yep.
I want to go mess
Yep.
around.
Yep.
How do you hold people's attention, right? I don't know if I'm not sure if it's harder for college students or easier actually compared to like businesses, but I'm sure either way it's difficult. How do you?
Yeah. So it's different. One of the things, especially when you get, I think about if I lead a retreat, for example, with professionals, sometimes it's saying to them out loud, look, I only have a day of your time. Like you've given me 9 to 5. You've cleared your calendars. We're not going to have this opportunity again for 6 months, a year, maybe ever. Are you all going to have a day that you could come to this place at the same time and have this conversation? So sometimes it's just reminding them, hey, look, I know you're getting tired. I know we just had a big carb lunch and all that other kind of stuff. Um, I'm going to give you 5. You need to check your phones, whatever, use the restroom, whatever it might be. Cool, but can we please be in this place together because we only have such a limited amount of time. The other thing goes back to that notion of being a thermostat. Like I recognize the fact that when there's a lull or so forth, I've got to dial up my energy to have people match it. Right. So, um, or if there's like a ton of energy, sometimes I need to use my tone or my body language to bring it back down.
Yeah.
The other thing, and this goes back to the notion of having an agenda. Like, so if I give you an agenda and I go, oh, from 9 to 10:30, we're going to do this. And then from 4:30 to 6:30, and then we're going to be done at 8 o'clock. In your mind, all you're doing is counting those minutes. You're like, oh, it's 7:55. I know we're going to wrap in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But if I don't tell you we're done at 8 o'clock, maybe we go to 8:15, and what happens from 8 to 8:15 is the most important part of the day.
Right.
It's one of those things where, again, I think the more you do it, the more you get confident understanding the fact that being a thermostat for the room means that even when everyone else is slipping, you've got to bring the energy. Or when there's a whole lot of tension and chaos, sometimes you got to like calm it down a little bit, bring it back to a natural state. I think that comes with, one, time, confidence, and two, again, back to that other point that we were making before, making some mistakes. I mean, I'll tell you, I haven't always gotten those dynamics right, but I have some sense of like, okay, what do group dynamics work as energy's fading, or what do group dynamics look like when there's a lot of tension, or when everyone's looking at their watch? What are some of the things that can be done to bring people back to the moment? The other thing that I always like to say, whether it's a keynote, workshop, retreat, whatever it is there will likely never be another time in the history of our lives that we are in the same place at the same time. Everybody in this room, we're here at this moment, and there's never going to be another time in all of our lives that this will be true again. So, can we please lock in for this moment and try to accomplish something extraordinary?
Yeah. That's great. How important is location? Right? Like, whether we're in the woods or whether we're in a conference room, like how much of a difference does that make?
Oh man, you're asking. So Nick, you're asking all the great questions, right? So it is amazingly important, but it's also, as a professional, something that you have no control over. So if I'm giving a keynote, let's just say I need a microphone, hopefully projection that is appropriate for the room, but none of those things are even guaranteed. Like they could be in the agreement. We can do the pre-engagement call, AV check, all that other kind of stuff, but it will fail. There will be moments where it will fail. The only thing that I ever get really sensitive to is the microphone, because I need to make sure that folks in the audience can actually hear. Um, Not surprisingly, for a lot of reasons, people have um, uh, disabilities related to their ability to hear things, and they're not going to be the ones who are going to raise their hand and be like, "Hey, I can't hear without the microphone." So anytime, by the way, anytime anyone who's speaking or who's with a speaker, if you hear or say this phrase, "Don't worry, my voice is loud enough," stop. Like,
Mhm.
stop. It's not about the volume of your voice or the intensity of your voice. You should try to make it as accessible as possible for everybody who's in that room. Especially my work with men. Men are going to be the least likely to be like, "Yeah, I can't hear." So
Yeah.
always make sure that the mic is available, turned on. But in terms of location or type of environments, you have so little control over those things, right? So, University of Oregon does this great thing where we retreat and take a group of people into the mountains, and it's awesome because it's isolated. Wi-Fi is kind of crappy. Um,
Mhm. It is. It is. I
you,
can attest. It is.
right, and you kind of have to be present, right?
Yeah.
Now, a couple of years ago, there was that ice storm in Eugene, and the retreat had to be rescheduled to a couple of weeks later, but that location wasn't available, so we went out to the ocean instead, to this hotel right on the ocean, and it was cool, but the dynamics were different because the Wi-Fi was fine, and
Yeah.
the
And
beds
there's a
the
mini
beds
water
were
park.
there's a water park and the
There's
beds
a
are more
mini water
comfortable and
park, and yeah.
the ocean's out there, and like it's different, right? I think about some places across the country. I'll give you an example. Maybe they're watching this. I love them. We always joke about it. University of New Hampshire has a large venue space for programs, and it's great. The acoustics are great. The audio visual is great, but it is always 800 degrees in this room. It is
Mhm.
the hottest room that I have ever been in. And I'm one of those people that, like, when I'm speaking, I'm moving around and like I'm going to be sweating anyway. And then you put 1,000 people in the room, and then you're on stage sweating under the lights. And by the end of it, I feel like I've dropped 10 pounds of sweat. So there's this like ongoing joke. Anybody who's ever in this room at the University of New Hampshire, it's like dress coolly, like short sleeves if you can, like don't wear sweaters because you'll you'll
It's
pass
like a
out from
sauna.
this heat, but you can't control it. That's their space. And they deserve all the same energy, whether we're at Camp Tadmore or we're out at the ocean or we're in the Union, whatever. We deserve the exact same thing. So we can't control the space. We can only control how we show up in it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been a big thing for me where it's like, especially sometimes I'll go to fraternity and we'll be in a classroom, right? And I have like a full, not stage,
Mhm.
but I have an area for me to be, right?
Yeah.
Like a teacher does. And then sometimes I'm standing at the front of their living room and there's 5 people directly to the right of me who I know can't see my slides. And I'm like stuck in this one place because if I move left, I'm in front of the TV.
Yep.
And it's like just like that. It is really interesting how much that impacts you. And also like you got there's nothing you can do. You got to roll with it.
And I'm gonna get, like, again, to get super nerdy about the art and the science of this. So a lot of times the classroom space feels best because all the AVs there and it's set up for it. But at the same time, I I dislike, I'll do it. It's whatever venue they say, but I dislike the classroom space because I don't want to be in the same place that you're learning
Mm.
biology on Tuesday at 8 a.m., right?
Don't want to be
Because
associated with that.
your mental pathway says, this is my biology class, and I'm just having a different experience here. The same way, like you at Camp Tadmore sitting up in the mountains, if I took biology class to Camp Tadmore in the mountains, you're going to be like, oh no, this is the place where we deeply reflect on things and build relationships and so forth. Again, it's making as many of those emotional pathways as possible too. So I don't love the classroom. I'll do it. But when I'm given my choice, I want the space that is not connected with something that is a have to do.
Yeah. What do you think is the funnest and the silliest, to use, very technical terms,
Yes.
part of being in a fraternity as a Hall of Fame fraternity member yourself? because I think I think at least for me, I like the consistent, not consistent, but like the good-hearted ball busting nature of it. Like I think that part is funny. It's like you'll be like at chapter and someone puts a slide up and you're like caught off guard, but it's really funny. Or we'll get into these super serious conversations about intramural football, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like you would think we're like debating the next president.
Yeah.
And I think those things are fun. I don't know.
I
Any
think
thoughts?
I think the coolest part is that that stuff never ends.
Mm,
No matter sort of age and stage, right? Like whether you're an undergraduate member, alumni member, um, some organizations call them elder members, which I think is an awesome term. Um, as long as they're not called elderly, like I think that that's an awesome term. So in 2024, it was my 25th year of membership of my organization, and I received a thing in the mail, this certificate, and it identified me as a member of what they called now the Silver Legion. And I was like, I've never heard of this before. So I had to ask. Like, I was like, what is the Silver Legion? And they're like, oh, well, that's at 25 years. And then jokingly, what they said was, it also means that now you get an opinion. like you're allowed to now have an opinion about
that's
the way
funny.
that things go. And I was like, well, I hate to tell you, but I always have had an opinion, and never been shy about sharing it. Right. So I think some of the silliness that even to this day I kind of chuckle at is I am not really good. I want to be careful saying this because it sounds bad on the surface, but I am not really good at rule following.
Hmm.
It's one of the reasons I was not very good at like K through 12. Too many rules. Like I'm one of those people that's back to a speaking reference. I did a national keynote. I guess it was a couple of years ago, and they had a tape line on the stage, and it was like you can't walk beyond that tape line because then you're out of the lights and the camera and everything like that. So I'm one of those people that, unfortunately, if you tell me you can't walk ahead of this line, Nick, what do you think the first thing that I did was?
Touch the big red button.
Oh, yeah, I'm like, fuck this line. Like, I mean, in my mind, I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm walking to this line. I'm like,
Tell me
so,
what to do.
so the idea of rule, and again, I think that the necessity, especially in fraternity and sorority, especially for our newest members, is to learn the rules so that you understand the structure, so that the values make sense, so that the rituals make sense. If you don't follow the rules, none of those things will ever connect. But once we've been around the sun a few times, for me now as a member of this Silver Legion, I still have every once in a while, like somebody tried to tell me what a rule is. Like, you're not allowed to do this or do this. It's like, or what? Like, what's
Yeah.
you laughed,
What's gonna yeah.
you joked about the Hall of Fame thing. Are they going to take me out of the Hall of Fame? I mean, I guess if I break a big enough rule, maybe so. But if I make a phone call and skip a step of like bureaucracy and standard process, are they going to be like, sorry, we're taking you out of the Hall of Fame? Uh, we're going to end your scholarship. Like, I don't think so. I mean, I think that that's probably the silliest part of it, is the fact that after after you understand the fundamental elements of your organization and its culture and dynamics and legacy and traditions, that we still emphasize these quote unquote rule things, right? So for my organization, I'm a Pi Kappa Phi, for those of you who are wondering. My chapter is very part of the culture is fixation on initiation order. So I don't know for you if like you know your PIN number,
Oh
for
yeah, I do.
example.
Yeah, I
Okay.
do.
But I don't know for you if it means very much. Like for us, it means everything. It means the order that we sit at things. It means the order in which we eat. It means the order in which we speak. Like it is everything. So I know not only my own, but I know important people along the way, their PIN number in relationship to me, and so forth, right? But at some point in time, it's like that's a cool tradition. But if you have something important to say, I'm 624. If you're 628 and you got something more important to say, don't wait for me. Like, say the thing. Skip the rule.
Yep.
Like do the thing that's necessary. And if you're hungry, like if your blood sugar's like, don't wait for me to eat. Jump in line. Like it's good, man. That to me is kind of the rule following part that I kind of like. That's silly.
And going back to personal brand and authenticity, though, like that's part of what makes you you and what makes you appealing to a lot of people is like, okay, well, part of my who I am and my brand is like, look, I'm going to bend the rules a little bit and we're going to get creative and like we're going to do what I think is most effective and best, whether that's in the rule book or not, right? And that's part of your appeal, and then that's also part of the tension of like that's for some people and it's not for others, right? But that's who you are.
I think that there's some traditional elements to it too, right? I also think that none of us have ever benefited from being completely rigid. And no matter what it is, like the more rigid we are, the worse the experience is going to be. We also, so my daughter graduated from high school yesterday, and
Congratulations.
thank you. No, the valedictorian gave a speech, and again, as a speaker, I'm paying attention to these things, right? And he
Yes.
said something that was really insightful. In fact, I took out my phone and I wrote it down. He said, "Our values mean nothing if we don't act on them, if we don't live up to them, if we don't make them verbs. They mean nothing." And I was like, wow, shit, like this is a high school senior graduating. And I'm like, that's a great way of framing it. Like, that's a better frame for the conversation between values and actions than I've heard in decades of thinking about this topic. But if I'm closed in my mindset, if I'm rigid to the point where it's like, no, the only way that we could talk about these things is in this sequence, I never would have heard it.
Yeah.
So let's loosen up. Let's learn some things. Let's be open to the notion that we don't have it all figured out and that our thoughts can evolve. And I think that if you think about our organizations, again, I know I'm getting a little philosophical and all that other kind of stuff, but our organizations were founded by young women and men. Most of them, like most of our organizations, young college age ish women and men who are trying to solve a problem and do so based on a set of values that they thought was best. And the beautiful thing is that they handed to all of us these values in this construct and also said to us, make it better. Like, it's yours, it connects all of us through eternity, but make it better. And to me, the wisdom of our founders is that they started something and challenged us to continue to improve it.
Love that. Casey, you are also a founder and a CEO. And I'm curious for you as someone who also has, a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, what's something about being a founder and CEO that's different than you anticipated, either positively or negatively?
Mm-hmm. Well, when I talk about entrepreneurship, I often say that so my title is founder and president because I want people to know that the origin story of the company is mine or it was something that I planted and today I lead it, right? But I think that the greatest challenge that we as individuals have is that founders often are stuck or fixated in the way that things were, and presidents, leaders, executive directors, managers, whatever you want to call it, are focused on the future. It's really hard to get those things aligned within one person. I don't do it perfectly. I tell our folks all the time, um, sometimes people will be like, hey, can we try this? And in my mind, we tried this in 2016. And I'm like, well, it can't work because all this other. That's a founder's mindset. But a president's mindset says, well, maybe it wasn't right then, but maybe the stars have aligned in a different way. And a classic example, if I can share it, is COVID years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in March 2020, we had done exactly 0 virtual programs in the history of our company. And I would have given you 1,000 reasons why it was a bad idea. And then the entire world shut down, and our calendar of events went from, pretty full to canceled and empty in like a week. And I'm in the fetal position, and I'm like, man, like what do we do next? And then people started asking whether or not we would do virtual programs. And out of necessity, the answer was yes. Even even keeping in mind all of the reservations that I had and all the reasons that I could tell you it was a bad idea, it was like yes, because this is what is true right now. If I had kept a founder's mindset and said, we'll just wait until in-person events come back around, what might we have missed?
Right.
But taking on a president mindset or executive director mindset or whatever it is, we go, okay, how can we adapt to what is true now? And the truth is, within 6 weeks or so, we started adapting. And here's the thing that I haven't said publicly very often, if so, never this bluntly. We actually got better during that time. We got better in our programming. We got better in our delivery. And now as we sit here in 2025, 5 years later, virtual programs are still part of what we do. It's not a huge part. It's not a part that all of us love, right? Because the feelings and the dynamics are different, but it's still a meaningful way to share important messages. And while looking at this camera right here is different than standing in front of a room of 2,000 people. 2,000 people or more. I know you got a big reach, Nick. 2,000 people or more might see this and still have the same type of movement attached to it, right? So again, I think that if we get too fixated on this is what I felt when I started this versus what is true now and how do we need to adapt to ensure that it's aligned with who we are and it's aligned with our work and our values and so forth, but it doesn't mean that the modality or the format can't shift, then we can accomplish a lot. And by the way, that's true in all areas of life, right? So like if you think about the most successful brands in the world, many of them didn't start as they exist now. Like Amazon. Amazon's original name, do you actually know the original name of Amazon?
I know they sold books.
They did. The original name was Relentless. In fact, fun thing for anybody who doesn't believe me, if you go to relentless.com right now, it will redirect you to Amazon. To
Really?
this day, it will still redirect you to Amazon, right? They adapted over time. They were doing this thing, and then we started selling some books, and now we can sell everything. If you can't find it there, it probably isn't for sale anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Certainly maybe the black market, right? But it went from an idea to an evolution. Nike being the same way, Apple being the same way. Like people think of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, but there was a third founder of Apple, and the logo was completely different. It was Isaac Newton sitting under a tree, and all this. We all evolve. We change over time, and that's the difference between being fixated in what was true versus what can't be true.
Right. I like to kind of think of it as like choosing to be successful, not right. It's like I think so many people get caught up of like I have this idea and it's like I'm right off the bat and like this is what it's going to be, and like the reality is no, it's like pivot, reset, pivot, reset,
Yeah.
right? And it's like you're not right. You're not going to be right out the gate. Like you have to be okay saying we're changing and we're going to continue to change. And this is probably wrong, and eventually we'll get there.
Yeah, and I know I want to be respectful of your time, Nick, but I know that you're also interested in this the business model of speaking as well. So I'm going to go back for a second to those pandemic times as well. One of the conversations that was being had amongst professional speakers is how do we price virtual programs, right? Because there's no travel involved, and there were good well-intended professionals who are like, my price is my price, right? So if they charged X dollars for an in-person event, they felt like they should also charge X dollars for a virtual event.
Mhm.
And I remember at the time thinking, that's not going to work, because not only are budgets challenged, constrained, so forth, but like, people know you're sitting in your home. Like they
Yeah.
know you're not wearing shoes right now, right? Like
Yeah.
how do you ask people to pay the same thing when they're getting a similar experience but not the same experience? And it turned out to be true. And there was a really great, successful speaker, a member of our team, and I don't want to name them by name because I don't want to embarrass them. But they said to our group, "Look, I'm not too good to sit at my dining room table for an hour for Y amount versus X. I'm not going to look at my family and say like I would rather have nothing than to have this for doing a virtual program." And I think that internally for us, that eliminated a lot of that ego attached to it. I guess we would call it like the unhealthy part of the ego.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's again, when you start thinking about what can be true, it makes things much easier than what has to be consistent all the way through.
Mm. One of the hardest parts about being a leader and working with others is having hard conversations, whether that's feedback or actually having to fire somebody. I've had
Yeah.
little minute experiences working
Yeah.
with, friends doing that, but you've done it for real. What is your
Yeah.
kind of approach to that?
It's the hardest thing. Um, it's the hardest thing as a leader, as a business owner, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, is to say to someone else, "I'm sorry, but you can't continue." Not that you can't continue in this profession, but you can't continue in this profession under the umbrella, or you're not meeting our standards. Um, I think leadership lesson 101 is, if you're having that conversation with someone where you're letting them go, professionally, from your organization, whatever it is, that conversation should never be a surprise to the person on the other end.
Mm.
If it is, like if they're surprised, never saw it coming, had no idea, you probably aren't doing your job as a leader. So if you're not providing constructive feedback, suggestions, guidance along the way, unless there's something just out of the blue, we shouldn't go from 0 to 100 in one step. I
Yeah.
often use, by the way, back to humanity, whenever I have had to have those type of conversations, I will always start it with acknowledging that it is a very hard conversation that's about to have, that we're about to have, or that I take no joy in it, because I do not take joy in telling someone, um, part of your identity, part of your professional dream, whatever it is, can't continue here. That's hard. I never want to get to a point where that's easy. Let's put it that way. People who take
Yeah.
joy in it, or I never want to be that person. So recognizing the humanity, but then again, along the way, constructively, if you've ever heard of the notion of tough love,
Yep.
tough love is constructive feedback. You want someone to be better. So from a position of love, you're giving them hard guidance in terms of where they've gotten outside the lines. If, by the way, the thing I always say about tough love, if there's no love attached to it, it's just tough. Like it's just you being a jerk, being
Mhm.
hard on someone, being harsh, just for the joy of it, right? So if it's not rooted in love, then it's really abusive. Um, but if you have practiced tough love, meaningful guidance along the way, and we get to a point where it just can't work, then you have to do it again, still with humanity at its core, because for that other person, it's the end of an experience,
Yeah.
and that's hard to do, especially speaking. The creative art of speaking involves the necessity of ego. We talk about internally a lot about this, the good ego. Like it takes something for someone to be like, "Give me the mic. I want to step on stage."
Yeah.
Like everybody's biggest fear is speaking, but not me. I want to be there. To then look at that person and say, "I'm sorry, but you can't. You might do it somewhere else, but you can't do it here." That's a tough thing to do.
Yeah. What's something that, running a business taught you that business school never did? What are some ways, even if it's not business related, just like how
Mm.
you've grown as a person, right? I feel like honestly, that's usually more impactful, right, than the technical skills of Excel or accounting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I could think of 100 ones, but I think again, kind of to keep in the same space. Um, I don't know that the textbooks will tell you that you're going to be presented with multiple right options.
Mm.
Like if you think about it, business management books and so forth are trying to encourage you to winnow down all of the things, and then here's the right answer, and then you move forward with this one. But there are going to be times in which multiple right answers are in front of you, and you have to decide which of them most aligns with your values. The other there was a rapper from the 90s. I heard him say in a video recently. He said, "Not all money is good money."
Yep.
The textbooks don't tell you that part either. Not all money is good money. There's some money, and I know this for those of you who are in college, you're like, any money is good money at this
Like,
point.
give me anything. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I hear you, and you need to eat. I'm not saying I'm not saying that. But there's going to be moments in your journey in which you're provided the opportunity to make more, but it's not good. It's not aligned with who you are. You're going to have to sacrifice your morals and values in order to get it. Not all money is good money, and there are times in which you will benefit more by leaving it on the table or leaving it for someone else than you are bending who you are in order to achieve it.
Casey, thank you for taking the time to come on. I sincerely appreciate it. Before we get out of here, will you tell us one of your favorite stories?
So pull back the curtain a little bit. Nick and I had a conversation about this, me being on the podcast. And Nick, by the way, it was a pleasure. Obviously, I knew that it would be, but thank you for having me. And you said, look, the only thing that I'm going to warn you is that, I'm going to ask you for a story at the end. And I'm like, okay, cool. But I'm a speaker, so I immediately think of multiple ones. So I'm going to ask you, do you want a story about a thing or a story about an idea?
An idea.
When I was in preschool and kindergarten, I attended what's called a Montessori school. And
I
for
went to
those of
one
you,
too.
did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the reasons that we understand each other, right? For those who might not be familiar, though, a Montessori school is about sort of free range learning, exploration. There are rules, but there are fewer rules than like sit in your desk and do this, right? So I go to Montessori school, and I actually flourish under that model because, as I shared with you earlier, I'm not very good at rules and structure and so forth. So this idea of free range exploration was really worked with me. But my teacher was a nun, and her name was Sister Mary Lisa. So I want you to think about free range school. Think of 20, 25-year-old little 5-year-old kids running around, free range, figuring stuff out. It would look like chaos if you walked into it. And the person who provided the structure for it was a Catholic nun. And as we know, Catholic nuns typically are very rigid. They're very like, this is the way it is, and you're going to do this and this and this, right? These are the people. I'm left-handed, by the way, that stereotypically try to make left-handed people into right-handed people because it's easier and the rules and so forth. Well, Sister Mary Lisa, who is not a saint, but I think of her sometimes as Saint Mary Lisa, not only had to put up with these 20 to 25-year-old kids running around wild, but included in that was little me. who again is not very good at any rules, at any structure. And I remember she used to say something to me over and over and over again. She would say, show patience, Casey. Show patience. And as a young person, and as I was growing, I thought that what she was saying to me was to be patient. Be patient. But the older I got and the more trips around the sun and the more that I became introspective into my own journey personally, spiritually, and so forth, it came to occur to me that that's not what she was saying at all. She wasn't saying be patient, being something that you're not. She was saying work on something that is going to benefit you in your relationship to others. Because she knew that this and this was going like this, but that other people weren't interpreting things at the same pace or at the same path that I was. So what she was telling little Casey to show patience was a challenge. And it was a challenge to ensure that my verbs were aligned with my values. Kind of like what that commencement speaker said just yesterday to the graduating class of my daughter's high school, that our values mean nothing if they're not matched by our actions. And it actually leads me back to the one thing that I share with every audience I ever work with. And I'm going to share it with you all right now too. And that is choices reflect priorities. Choices reflect priorities. It means very little what we say. It means very little what we proclaim as being our values or our ethics. The only thing that matters is what we do, our verbs. And when Sister Mary Lisa taught me to show patience, I hope she knew that one day I would get it. And that's why I wanted to end it with this. I hope you can get it too. Try to demonstrate something that you yourself struggle with, whether it's patience or anger control or inclusivity or whatever it might be to you. Try to work on the thing that aligns your values with your actions.
Casey, the best of the best. Thank you for coming on. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick. And thank you for everybody tuning in. I hope that we get the opportunity to connect. I know that Nick's going to probably share information in the notes and everything like that, but please never be a stranger. And I look forward to hearing from you and seeing what you do on your journey as well.
Yes, I will put everything in the show notes. And thank you to everyone listening. Till next time.